I've been playing Rocket League since 2016 without skipping much of a beat. I mean, maybe missing 1 or 2 seasons, but it got me thinking, what if I decided to start from scratch? Hey, I'm Jack, your friendly neighborhood Rocket League player cruising the fields of OCE. In today's video, I'm going to share what I would do if I started over in Rocket League, right from 0 hours through to the 6,000 plus I have now. Let's get into it. Alright, so we've got 3 parts to this video and they're all going to start with F. The first F I have is foundation. Now Jack, what do you mean by foundation? Well my friends, it's those little things you need to think about when you first launch and open the game. Now I'd need to travel way back in time to make this possible, but I'd actually start playing Rocket League at a younger age. We see how many of the prodigies that come through Rocket League being 14, 15, and it's because they have those years of experience getting to learn the game when they're 10, 11, 12 even. An example of a player that I can use when first starting out in Rocket League was Scrub Killer. Scrub was a well-known 1v1 player before even hitting the RLCS and made an entry quite easily to the competition. And it's a very similar trend happening here in 2023, with Zen coming into the competition and absolutely dominating. So for me, picking up this game at 17 years of age was way too late in the game to even consider going pro, which leads me into my next point, and that is PC over console. I spent my first 3,000 hours grinding away on an Xbox and an ancient TV, and my rank suffered dramatically. But as soon as I switched over to PC, managed to grind all the way up to champion, and then grand champion as well. So if you're someone considering getting Rocket League, I would highly recommend starting off on PC. While it differs between players, I would recommend playing with a PlayStation controller, either a PS4 or PS5 controller. Now to back that statement up, I switched over to a PS5 controller back in 2020 and haven't changed a controller since. Compared to when I first started on an Xbox controller, I went through probably 10 to 12 different controllers in that space of time. I felt like I spent way too much money on Xbox controllers during my time with them, and yeah, the PS5 controller is just holding up so much better. Each to their own, I guess. What controller do you play with? This was something I left way too late into the game to change, and that was changing my camera settings. I found I stuck to the default camera settings for a little too long, but found just slightly tweaking the camera settings to what the Reddit community was saying felt worlds better when going out onto the field. Another foundation was to stick to one car. I found switching between cars early on really affected my way at understanding how the game worked and understanding the physics that went into the car. But obviously, as I got hundreds and thousands of hours into the game, realized it was better to just stick with one car for a majority of my game time, either the Octane or the Fennec. Just a suggestion. Lastly, and this one's more of a mental aspect to approaching the game, but remembering to prioritize game sense over learning mechanics. I don't mean to skip out on the fundamental mechanics though, of course. I find allowing yourself to build a better game sense allows you to work on the mechanics you need to get up to the higher ranks. The second F that we have here are the fundamentals. Now obviously, the fundamentals is what builds your gameplay and allows you to improve at this game. When brainstorming this part of the video, I wanted to think back to when I first started the game and what I didn't know back then, shaping these next points into what I think are the fastest ways to improve at this game. Now I know most people have already said this in the Rocket League community, but to play more 1v1s, because I find that 1v1 is really the only game mode that will point out all of the flaws in your playstyle. And yeah, when you first start out with 0 hours, there are plenty of flaws that you need to work on. I also believe that it helps with your mindset and mentality when approaching this game too. As we all know, there are many people that give up way too easily, and yeah, are probably the ones to insta-leave when you're beating them in a 1v1. Next is to master the following mechanics: power slides, fast aerials, and half flips. And I find momentum is an important component to improving at this game and climbing those ranks. I find that you can also build speed into your game style if you improve at maintaining your momentum. Next is to use air roll practically and purposefully. And I say this now because I've developed such a bad air roll habit that I'm just using it unnecessarily. Air roll is key to mastering your car control. And also another quick tip is to learn how to air roll in both directions. Trust me, it will help out a lot in the long run. The earlier you learn them both, the better off you'll be. Now, while I did some aspect of training, I feel like a much stricter workshop, custom training, and free play regime would have helped me immensely. Like, I look back to the golden days of Rocket League YouTube when Kev Perd's YouTube aerial tutorials were the only things we had. Things like custom training and workshop maps didn't even exist back then. So I find players picking up the game today have much more of an advantage, especially if playing on PC. Warming up before hitting competitive is so important, especially when you're first starting out in the game. I know from personal experience, I spent way too many times going straight into competitive to get Rising Star, only to see myself spend hours upon hours trying to grind my way back up after losing 3 or 4 divisions. This next one is also something I struggled with for many years, and that is to master first touches early on, because I find it helps you maintain possession and allows you to set up your next play a lot easier. If you're faffing about trying to maintain possession on the ball, your opponents are much more likely to take possession off of you, and more often than not, concede more goals. Last up in the fundamentals section is to learn the speed flip as soon as possible. I know a little controversial in being more of a complex mechanic to master. However, I find if you learn a speed flip kickoff, you can work your way up the ranks very quickly. I find it also helps you improve on your car control relatively quickly, as the kickoff is arguably the most important part to the game. Now this last F that I've come up with is a bit of a goofy one, and that is the forget pile. Obviously, these are the things you want to forget about when first picking up the game of Rocket League. So here are my forgets. Forget queuing casual to warm up. Forget queuing extra modes as your primary game mode. Forget solo queuing in this game. Forget about being scared to lose my rank. And lastly, forget about winning every game. Just play it to improve. Now I'm keen to hear from you. What are some things in your forget pile if you were to start over in Rocket League? So there we have it, a fun little video on thinking about what I'd do if I was to start over from ground zero in Rocket League. Get the ground zero joke? Anyways, it's been good to film another Rocket League video. I know I've been MIA for quite a little bit, and there's just so much going on in my life right now too. As always, feel free to suggest some things you'd like to see come out as a video next on the channel. I'm always open for suggestions. I'm Jack, and I'll see you next time. Catch up.